Kat, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast for our second installment of talking about newer trucks that are just kind of coming out of warranty, and you guys at shops like Siskiyou Diesel are starting to see issues with them. So I look forward to kind of sitting back and learn about the L5Ps.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we
Um,
there
yeah,
there's I don't really know where to start, so I think I'll rely on your experience with them. I think the first thing, um, yeah, like there's some great stories you guys have and some things on social media that highlight them. But if you have an L5P, it's out of warranty. What kind of issues could you expect, or might be probable, or what are you guys seeing at the shop?
so I mean, currently right now with everybody, I mean, if you have an L5P, whether it's brand new, it's out of warranty, it doesn't matter. I think everybody at some point in time, and if you haven't dealt with it yet, you've gotten pretty lucky, is the electrical issues that the trucks have. For any shop that has any repair guides that we use, whether it's Mitchell's, All Pro, Snap-on, whatever. Whenever you put in a year, make, and model truck, you put in a VIN number, you get a breakdown of a sheet of current common repairs that are out now, tech bulletins, common check engine codes, all of that. So across the board right now, whether it's a 2017 L5P or whether it's a 2025, currently right now, the top repair still today is going to be the injector harnesses. The more common code that you would get is it's a P0300, which is a random cylinder misfire. And then that's kind of like a generic code that you get, and then you get a companion code with it, which will show you which cylinder is having a problem, which would be whatever injector harness is having an issue. And then that's your best case scenario, because if you can catch it beforehand, before it shorts out a solenoid, then you're just out having a dual harness. So right now, the common ones that do that is number 4 and number 7, which is kind of funny because if you think back with the LOYs, the 04.5 to 2005, they had injector harness issues, and theirs I think was 2 and 7. So the L5Ps have got 4 and 7. And kind of the same thing, when they start acting up, it sounds like a tractor. Kind of misfires, it's low on power. The biggest pain in the butt that I find when this happens to customers is that the computer system on the L5P in their dash on their message board, it'll say service emission system, see dealer now. It will not reference any kind of fueling issue or anything of that nature. So you'll get a customer that calls and they want to book an appointment for a diag for their emission system because that's what it says.
Yeah.
They don't have a scan tool, they don't have a code reader that says anything like that. But for the most part, as a shop, you ask them questions, is it running? Is it low in power? Are you in limp mode? Is it, saying you got X amount of miles until you're, reduced down? And, they come back and say, well, yeah, it's running rough. It sounds like it has a miss. And then for the most part, oh, okay, cool. Perfect, perfect. You just need an injector harness, easy peasy. Don't panic, calm down, because they think they blew up their engine. They think that their emission system freaked out and it caused an engine failure, because on some of them, they do sound like they're down a cylinder. It sounds like you lost, potentially you lost your motor. Um, the nice thing about that repair is, like what we talked about the last week, is a bunch of the manufacturers and distributors got on board and was able to get to the market a lot of really nice repairs for us. Fleece really pulled it together and made these really nice kits and packs for the L5Ps. If you go on Fleece Performance website and you go under the L5P, or you can just go into their electronics center, they make harness connectors for almost everything on that truck. And it's not just the injectors harness that have issues, unfortunately. We're starting to see it with a lot of connectors on the truck, as well as a lot of the modules that are on the truck are having issues, which is kind of scary. They're having some bigger module problems. in the TCM, it is having a braking issue where with the TCM, when your tow haul is on and you let off the accelerator and it's kind of downshifting and slowly braking you, it's applying the brakes and it's locking up the brakes on the truck. Um, and like we had one of our customers, he was towing a skid steer and ended up in the bed of his truck.
Wow.
Um, so they do have a open recall on that currently. Um, it is a software update for the TCMs. Um, the ABS modules are also having an issue. We are having shuddering or surging where the rear brakes, when you are towing heavy and it's under a load, again with tow haul on, the brakes shudder. Again, a big problem, especially while you're towing. We've had a couple of our customers that were almost in some pretty decent accidents where, they're going downhill and they're using their brakes and their ABS system starts shuddering and grabbing the brakes and starts pulsing them and they're, pulling a toy hauler and it just starts fishtailing all over the road. So I think that's really been the biggest headache that we've had so far with the L5Ps is electrical gremlins. And then obviously when they're out of warranty, they don't want to go to the dealer because dealers are super expensive hourly. And with electrical stuff, there is no book time. Unfortunately, it is what it is, especially if we don't necessarily have a direction to go with or into with these problems. But fortunately, with a lot of the programs that we do use for repair, they do have so many problems that we do have directions that they do point us in that we kind of know where to start at. But that's kind of number one on the list for L5Ps today. From 17 to 25 is going to be pretty much their entire electrical system. That's
Would,
number one.
wouldn't that be one of the toughest sort of situations? Because it's not like what we talked about on the Power Strokes beforehand, where there were some things you could do preemptively, maintenance wise, and whether you're taking it to a shop or doing it yourself, you can kind of stay ahead of the curve a little bit with some of the issues. Whereas when I think of electrical, it probably happen at
There's
any
no
time. Yeah, it could just be random when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that because people always ask, well, what can I do? Can you add an extra ground? I mean, sure, that's still not going to help you because a lot of these issues, they're the modules. Um, like on one of them, on some of the years, they don't all have this. It's an added package for one of the tow hauls. It's the trailer brake module for Hydrostar. Um, it's having an issue where it is causing spikes in the electrical system and it is stemming from their module on the truck. And they have no fix. Um, so it is an open tech bulletin notification. Uh, Unfortunately, like if somebody comes in and they are having an issue and they do have that module on their truck, essentially we just have to unplug it. And they don't have trailer brakes. There's nothing really that can be done about it because with it plugged in and you're using it, it is causing spikes in the electrical system. And it's just starts causing haywire with everything else.
Is it a weekly problem you guys see at the shop?
It's starting to, yeah. Especially with, 17s now. I mean, there's like most of them are around 100,000 plus miles. So we're starting to see a lot more of them coming in where we're having to do harnesses. I mean, whole harness, not repairs, whole engine harnesses, modules because they're shorting out ECMs. Um, what's the other thing on? I think the next big thing is going to be their emission system. And the biggest problem, and I want to throat punch the engineers so hard for just the entire design. I mean, everybody does. Nobody likes the emission system on any of these trucks, but what they did with the L5Ps, It really is a pain in the butt with what they did. The next common repair that's listed for the US right now or for nationwide on these trucks is going to be the NOx sensor code, the P20EE. So that guy right there, this is a turbo off the L5P. Just this is the turbo. That fat girl right there is a catalytic converter, or what we would call the DOC. So it's the diesel oxidation catalyst is what it is. So that is right off the that's right off the turbo. So this guy has its own NOx sensor. It has its own EGT sensor. The turbo has its own EGT sensor. But so when we get that code, essentially what that's telling us is that a NOx sensor that's in the CAT system, and you have another one. So you have a DOC, and then you have an SCR. And each one of those have a NOx sensor. So when you get that code, it's telling us that one of the NOx sensors or one of your CATs has insufficient flow. So that can either mean that one of them is clogged, or we have a NOx sensor that's could be failing and just isn't reading right, and it's throwing the code. Just it's acting up and it's could be giving us a false reading. A lot of times what you'd have to do from there when you get that check engine code is that you do have to go and take the truck for a drive and hope that the exhaust pressure differential sensor is metering correctly. So that guy is going to be back in the DPF. We use that as a metering source to kind of tell us the pressure or the load that is on the emission system or on the DPF that's in the truck. And we kind of have to base what's going on with the emission system off of that and hoping that that's reading appropriately. 9 out of 10 times what we can do is force a regen and kind of sit there and watch the voltage on the sensors and see if we have any uneven readings, any kind of spikes. Look at your EGT sensors too. You have 5 EGT sensors in that exhaust system. And ideally, if an emission system or your CAT system is working appropriately, the farther back it goes as it's working through your exhaust, the EGT sensor at the very back should be the hottest if it's working right. But that first, what is it? Yes, it's technically going to be this guy. That first EGT sensor has to see damn near 600 degrees to even start a regen, to even start kicking it into its high idle. So if this is plugged, it's not going to see that temperature. And if that doesn't see it, your truck's not going to go through regen. It's not possible. It's not going to do it. And then the real pain in the butt about this guy is that you can't get it off with the turbo in the truck.
So you take it off.
Or the cab. Yeah. And a turbo R&R on these trucks is like 10 hours. So you're either pulling a turbo or you're pulling a cap, which our guys have gotten pretty quick. So it's kind of a toss up, I guess, depending on the care of the body of the truck. We'll roll underneath it and kind of look for rust. Any other factors that could play into a cab pull that could add additional expense. So whether it's going to be cheaper to pull cab or remove the turbo, because obviously with the turbo removal, you're going to have extra cost in EGR gaskets. Obviously, if you pull the EGR, you're going to clean it, you're going to flush it. There will be extra time involved there. So typically we do try to pull the cabs when we do that if we have to service that guy. If that guy is a problem, if we do notice that the exhaust differential pressure isn't right, and that first EGT sensor in the exhaust, not the one in the turbo, which there is one in the turbo, but the one that's actually in the down pipe, if that one's not seeing enough heat, then we know we have a problem with that cat. But we do see that that's typically one of the biggest issues why the L5P emission system with the cats and the DPF has the biggest issue is because of the struggle that the truck has with trying to build enough heat to burn out everything. It is a real see you next Tuesday. Real pain in the butt.
So it would be so probably from a parts perspective, that's not even comparable to the labor that you're going to run into if you have one of these trucks, one of these issues. You're going to pay out to fix this one sensor that's not reading correctly.
Well, so I mean, this one's easy. We can get to that one pretty good. So that's not a big deal. The sensors, as long as the sensor is our problem, that's easy enough. We keep good new GM sensors here in stock that we primarily just use for testing, which most shops don't, because that one retail is almost $500.
Wow.
The other one that is in the SCR, that one is almost $400. So we keep $1,000 worth of NOx sensors on hand just for testing. Just it makes it quicker across the board for everybody. That way we know if indeed we have an issue with a sensor that isn't reading appropriately and it's going haywire, because when you get that code, that P20EE, all that's telling us is that a NOx sensor failed a test. That's all it's telling us, is that because your NOx sensors are constantly taking readings. Tony Salas came and did a training for us on these specifically. We focused on the L5Ps and the LMLs with their emission system, but with the NOx sensors, they're constantly doing their own tests. So, but when you get that code, that just tells us it failed the test. And we have to figure out why, whether it's the cat that's a problem, the NOx sensor that's the problem, or is the issue in the engine, similar to what we were talking about with the Fords. Is the problem actually in the motor? Is there something going on there? Is there any kind of blow-by? Is there something going on with the injectors? But that would be the next thing in line with the L5Ps that we're seeing with the, I guess, failures or repairs that we're having to deal with would be with the emissions equipment.
Is the emissions equipment sort of like the other conversations that we've had where it can vary based on how someone's driving it, how aggressive they are with towing, getting the RPMs up, doing those longer mileage trips, and this specific issue, or is it kind of
Yeah.
random?
So with these guys, it is primarily we find that our customers that I guess beat the heck out of them, really use them a lot, continuously have them under a load that are working them. They really don't have that much of a problem. Our customers that go in town driving, quick stops, Lord, do they have problems. Our customers that live on the coast, for example. I just had him in here literally on Friday. We had his truck in here a few months ago. He had an issue. His truck had caught on fire. And we had replaced a bunch of parts on it, but he's been having consistent issues with this code, with the P20EE. And the ongoing issue, we sold him an Edge CTS3 screen just to kind of meter and monitor the EGT sensors, the pressure in the exhaust, his silt mass load. And then obviously the other nice thing with the CTS3s is that on a Duramax, you can force a regen. You can't do that on a lot of trucks, but on those trucks, you can't force a regen yourself. So if you are watching and monitoring your soot mass load and it is starting to creep up there, you can force a regen. Plus, you can also see when it is going through regen itself. So it is something where you can actually monitor it too. So it's something nice that somebody could invest in. Not that expensive. CTS3s are under $500. And they plug right into the OBD2 port. It will meter anything that your ECM will read. But with that customer, his issue is he lives on the coast, off the Oregon coast. So where they're at, it's off of 101. And if you've ever been on the Oregon coast or California coast on 101 at all, you're lucky to be able to go 45 miles an hour. It is nothing but twists and turns. And then from him going from where he lives over to here again, twist and turns, you're lucky to hit 60 miles an hour. So his truck almost never sees the RPM, the speed, or the temperature that that truck requires to go through regen by itself. So that one sensor that's in his exhaust, we had him just take a quick video with his phone, just his normal drive time because he is in construction. Just normal temps that he would see from his house to work. And that EGT sensor never saw above 450 degrees. And we're like, well, that's your problem. That's not going to work. So from there, unfortunately for him, where he's at, he has to force that truck through regen on that edge screen by itself because the truck will not do it. It's not possible. Not for where he lives. It's not possible.
If somebody had a CTS3 and they were watching this soot accumulation, at what point is it suggested to force a regen?
When you start creeping up into like the high 30s to 40s, I mean, that would be typically the trucks will start doing regen by themselves if they're in a position to do that. If you are able to get on the freeway or get on the road to, be able to do it for typically it's about 45 minutes of drive time. So like if you can get on the freeway or on a highway somewhere where you can see higher RPMs, and then again with Duramaxes, you can put them in a manual shifting mode too. I would tell people you don't have to put it into drive and go get a freaking speeding ticket. We want RPMs, we want heat. Tow haul, not even just tow haul, just manual shifting mode. Shift it yourself. Keep your RPMs, closer to 2000 and get that truck to run hot. You're not going to hurt it. A lot of those EGTs, like on one of the trucks, like the rear exhaust sensor, we had one truck at 1400 degrees. I mean, they get hot. It's fine. You're not going to hurt it.
Yeah.
But that is something that is nice for a lot of customers that are, if you do live in an area where seeing RPMs like that is just not possible, or those speeds, or if you notice that your truck just isn't seeing those temps, because most people are like, God, my truck's great, it runs really cool. And I'm like, that's not good. At least not on that side of things, that's not good. For coolant temps, yes. Engine oil temps, yes. Transmission temps, awesome. But as far as metering your EGT temperatures, post turbo, we need those higher.
Hey, Diesel fans, I wanted to let you guys know that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code 25TDP40, get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, different handle designs, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. If you're in the market, head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 25TDP40 to get 40% off MSRP. Do you guys see, what about the engine itself? Are you guys seeing some of the hard part failures or other components with it?
So one of the scarier ones that we are starting to see now is why they did this, I don't know. But the glow plugs, they went away from a metal material like they had from a 1 to 16, and they're ceramic. Um, so they are really prone to breaking, cracking. They do not take heat well. I don't know why they did that at all. Um, I mean, in general, with glow plugs, you've always had to be really careful when you took them out, especially on those heads, with them being cast aluminum. You've always had to be real careful. There's a lot of carbon and soot buildup that's inside there. You've always had to be careful. I mean, people break them all the time. But if those break and it breaks off inside a cylinder, it's not like the old ones where, I mean, there's a good chance it would probably burn off because it was metal. It could it would break down, and chances are of it hurting the motor was still a good chance, but it was minimal. Now, if this breaks off, you have to get it out. It's not going to burn out. It's got to come out because of the material that it's made out of. Thank God, knock on wood, we haven't had any come into our shop that's happened with. None of my guys have broken them, thank God. They are essentially treated as a one-time use only. Chevy GM does say once you pull it, it's got to go. Do not reuse it. You have really, really got to be careful when you are installing them to not really get any side pressure put on them. Uh, just they're a little bit more delicate. I don't know why they did that, but they did. And here we are. Um, we've had some people mention or complain. We've had a few customers about the injection pump that is in those trucks. They're not CB4s, but there were some people that have been experiencing some similar failures. But those failures that we have seen or heard of are only on the bigger cabin chassis trucks or the trucks that were ordered that had the dual tanks. But Chevy GM does have a recall on the trucks that have the dual tanks. So not the midship tank, but the over axle tank, there is an issue with it collapsing internally with either the tank having vacuum suction issues and it just kind of sucking in on itself. And then when it does that, it just causes the vacuum pressure, and then it restricts the fuel from going up to the engine bay, and it causes the truck to die. It essentially causes it to run out of fuel and it dies. And okay, the pump runs dry. Any pump runs dry, it's going to have a problem. I don't care what pump it is, it's going to have a problem. So I'm not sure if I think it's HP4 pump or whatever they're calling it. I don't know if that pump is actually going to have an issue like the CP4, just because the only trucks that we've seen that have had these issues are the trucks that have had the dual tanks. And those over the axle tanks do have a problem. And that's what's causing the failure with the pumps, at least the ones that we have seen. So don't know if the actual injection pumps are an issue just by themselves. Let's see, what other one? The fuel filter that they changed up. They went from in the engine bay to underneath the truck, and it's no longer a spin-on filter. It is a canister style, and it's a plastic spin-on. Don't know why they did it, but they did. So it is underneath the truck. It can get hit. Obviously, it's exposed to the elements, so it can dry out, it can break, it can crack. We've had a few customers where they've had to change it on the side of the road because their they got bad fuel, the filter got clogged. They went and stripped it, the cap, and they're like, well, what do I do? There's no fix for that, my guy. You're gonna have to get towed somewhere. But we do have good fixes for that. Kind of same thing. FASS came to the table. There's a billet adapter to get rid of that. HS Motorsports has one as well. Not to get confused with H&S guys. Okay. Been around for a while. It's not the same. Same thing. Looks the same. Not the same. Not the same company. But they do have one which fixes that problem. So then you're not bumping into that as much. Up pipes, manifolds, they're getting to be more of a problem as well. They went away from a bolt style on the exhaust manifolds to a stud style, very similar to the ones that are in the 6.7 Fords. I don't know why they did that because, I mean, the 6.7 Fords have issues with them breaking. And the Duramax, the L5Ps are doing that as well. But there are some companies that do have some upgraded ones out on the market. PPE has upgraded ones, WC Fab, Dirty Hooker Diesel. There's a few other companies that have them out, but they do have upgraded exhaust manifolds with upgraded hardware and up pipes. I bet again on certain years you can do them without the cab off, but on other years you can't. The cab has got to come off to do it, which is another pain in the butt. So, but that we're starting to see at about 100,000 to 120,000 miles, like literally right after they're out of warranty. They start squealing, sounds like an elephant. And normally a lot of people are only really hearing it when they're towing and their exhaust brake is on and they're on diesel. But not necessarily a huge, like catastrophic motor failure quite yet. The ones that we have seen were because of the glow plug. And then the other ones that we have seen some bottom end failures. And we've sent in for some oil samples on that to kind of see what the heck happened there. When we got back our oil samples, there's huge amounts of boron in it, so bearing material. The oil though did have a little bit of dilution in it with some diesel, but still not quite sure on how or why, it was getting into there. It's not like on the L5Ps where it's similar to the Dodge or the Fords, where after a combustion they inject again. They don't do that. They have a totally separate injector in the exhaust for that. They don't do that. But yeah, no, we have seen some L5Ps kind of dropping like flies, and they are losing their bearings, their main bearings. But we're not quite sure why yet.
Do
Still trying to kind of sort that out.
with the aftermarket side, like with tuning and hard parts and those sorts of things, are you guys seeing transmission failures start to rise with people who are doing modifications and increasing power?
Oddly enough, not on the 6 speeds, but on the 10 speeds we are. We have a couple 10 speeds in here right now, and their torque converters are shot. It's either the torque converter or it's that front pump. We got a 2023 in here right now that customer had the truck tuned, and shortly after the fact, started having shifting issues. So they went to a shop in the town where they live, and they said there's something wrong with the valve body. I'm not sure how they came to that conclusion, but they went and replaced the valve body. Valve body did not fix the issue, clearly. So they put their old valve body back in. They said truck was not taking a transmission quick learn or relearn, which, I mean, that in itself is a problem, especially if you do anything with the transmission. If you unplug any of those sensors, if you replace the valve body or unplug any of those solenoid packs, on a lot of the transmission service procedure guides, they do say you should do a transmission relearn, especially if you are around the 30 to 35,000 mile transmission service range. You should do a relearn on the transmission for them, and the truck wouldn't do it. So I'm not sure if that's going to be tuning related for why it wouldn't. But we got the truck to do it, but by the time the truck got to us, it was already having problems. And its converter is making all kinds of racket. And that truck was only tuned and driven for about 20 miles.
Wow. Well, and
So,
well, with the converter too, if there's material coming off the clutch or any metal or anything like that, then it's going to contaminate the whole system and the transmission, and it can
well,
get.
yeah, it's gonna go into the valve body. From the valve body, I mean, you've got valves that are physically moving inside there. They're going to start probably scoring up the wall inside of there. From there, it's going to move its way through to the clutch packs. And if you get a valve that's stuck, then that valve isn't going to apply the appropriate pressure to that clutch pack. And if you don't have enough pressure going to it, it's not going to engage it appropriately. Instead of, having a clutch pack go and grab and engage, you'll just kind of have them kind of floating and just kind of slowly working against each other. That's a very good possibility that that happened. Um, but we can't really see any material in the fluid because the fluid was dropped multiple times because they were replacing a valve body, filters, and other parts. And, when we talked to the customer, like, okay, what did you have a shifting issue before you did all this? They're like, no, we had no problems. So then why are you replacing hard parts? You
Yeah.
know, it didn't. So not sure if it was bad tuning that caused the tranny to fail. Was it already having problems? Not sure, but I know on that one, that truck only has like 30,000 miles on it. I mean, ideally, it wasn't really due for a trans service as it is. Um, so not sure what the heck happened there. But we do have a few other ones that are starting to have tranny issues, but they're 10 speeds. We haven't really seen any 6 speeds. I mean, if you beat on them hard enough, yeah, they're having problems, but they're getting the appropriate amount of mileage out of them. You know, a truck that's been tuned for a while, with, 180,000 miles on it, having tranny issues, that's normal. That's normal wear and tear. That's nothing unusual. These 10 speeds, with having tunes on them and only lasting, 30 to 50,000 miles. That's a problem. Now,
Right. So,
granted, keep in mind, these are not trucks that have emission compliant tunes on them. So they're more aggressive sides of tunes that have been towed in that we're trying to help other shops with that we're like, because Matt here, he builds Allison's. So he'll take a look and kind of give him a little bit of feedback on it, on what he thinks is going on with the transmission. But it's like, you guys, I don't know what you did,
yeah.
but and then we went, flashed the truck back to stock for them, put it completely back to stock, and it was better, but still having issues. And it's like, okay, well, we feel that whatever tuning you had in here probably did the damage, but it's not, you need a tranny at this point. It's not, there is no band-aid for this.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely gets expensive once you up the power and you start to get into a different kind of range of expenses and then issues, that can pop up. And I thought it'd be really cool to kind of step back generally with this topic, as well, because we went through, like, specifically with the L5P, the electronics in the modules that can be an
Yeah.
issue, the manifolds, the sensors, on the system, and isolating those, the glow plugs. And on our last video, someone had commented on YouTube, and they said, I'm paraphrasing it, but it was like, hey, these issues aren't anything that pertain to a brand new truck. They're trucks that are out of warranty. And I thought it'd be good to spend a little bit of time on that, because the ones that are under warranty, they're probably not going to you or any other diesel shop. They're going right back to for GM or Ram to be serviced under warranty and they get it back for free. But the whole focus of what we're talking about isn't like a 2025 or a 2024 truck that's brand new off the lot. We're focusing on what you're seeing from owners that have had these for 3+ years and what's common and what's arising. So I wanted to focus in and
Mhm.
get your take on that a bit as far as like your data points and the experience that you guys have, how it's different than like this isn't a review of a 2025 L5P or a Power Stroke. This is three
Right.
to
Like we're not, for the most part, people do come in and say, they're like, well, this doesn't really apply to brand new. You don't say. Well, obviously, we're not saying brand new. Who is willingly, which, I mean, if you want to pay out of pocket for somebody else to deal with your truck versus having it taken care of for free, by all means, more than happy to. And we do. We do have a handful of customers that refuse to go to the dealer. We have a few customers here that just detest our dealers that we have here, and they are more than willing to pay out of pocket for a shop to deal with the truck than go to the dealer. So every now and then, yeah, do we see brand new trucks? Absolutely. And we do have a lot of people that do come back and say, well, you can't put that part on the truck because it's going to void the warranty. Well, a lot of those parts that we do put on the trucks, for example, the fuel system, if you put on a better aftermarket fuel filter system. Fun fact, Brad from Fass on his fuel filtering systems, his stuff does not void warranties. That stuff has already been sorted out. It does not void warranties. And for the most part, on a lot of dealers, when you do purchase your trucks, if you are consistently going to the same dealer, you can actually get a lot of this stuff kind of sorted out. You can run this stuff through them and be like, hey, can I do this? And a lot of dealerships are more than okay with you putting on systems like that because they don't add horsepower. They're not, it's not bypassing or adding any pressure either. So these fuel systems are not upping fuel pressure by any means at all. They're not adding horsepower. They are filtering the same as what the OEM one does, if not doing it better. Um, a lot of companies and a lot of dealers, they're totally fine with that. And if they're not fine with it, you can keep your OEM units. We have customers do this, and if and when they do have a problem, they put their stock stuff back on and then they go to the dealer to have the issue addressed. It's not the end of the world. Fuel filter systems, like if you did the fleece kit on the Fords, you're going to spend an hour swapping the filter systems back over. For this L5Ps, if you did something like this, you spin on, you spin off, it's done. Um, some of the other parts that you would put in the engine bay for like the map, um, a lot of the map sensors have issues with them getting carboned or gummed up, and it puts the truck into reduced power mode. They have spacers for those. S&B makes them. A lot of the stuff is quick. It's easy. You can take it off. You can swap it out, and then you can go to the dealer.
yeah.
It's not that hard. But again, a lot of these parts that we are putting on trucks, they're not adding horsepower. They're not upping fuel pressure. Um, so they don't void your warranty. And then on a lot of that stuff, for example, like fast fuel systems, or again, the fleece fuel filter kits. If you go in to the dealer and you have a catastrophic fuel failure, whether it's an LML, let's say with a CP4, or that Ford with the CP4, and they are going to try their hardest to get out of paying for this repair. They're not willingly going to pay for this. All they have to do is find the slightest bit of contaminant in your fuel system for them to say, sorry, we're not going to pay for this. All they have to do is find rust. And with diesel today, even with B5 having at least 6% water in it, they're going to find rust. They're going to find it. So you're better off putting on these better filtration kits and then swapping them off if you have a problem than you are not doing them, because the dealers they're not willingly going to pay for something that they don't have to. They're not
Right.
going to,
Yeah.
you know, they're not going to, because if they were willing to do that, CP4s would have had massive recalls already. I mean, Chevy's just now doing that, and it's only in certain states. It's not across every state in the US right now. It's only in certain states on certain models. Dodge, they only did their CP4s for about a year and a half before they're like, oh shit, this is a bad idea. And they went back to their CP3. So it's, they're not willingly going to do it. You can if you have a brand new truck, you can put these parts on them, you can take them right back off. These parts they're not hard to put on.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can swap them out.
I think that's really, really the important part is like it's hard to get data. It's hard to get information like this on newer kind of trucks because we're talking 3 to 4 years old, and a lot of the stuff is just handled at the dealer level. And
And you don't see it.
yeah, you don't see it. You're not spending for it. Maybe not even looking at the invoice to see what they did. But once that warranty's out, now you're on the hook for the repairs and the money and the
Hmm.
time. It's helpful to know what you might face. Or if you're buying a truck that's 3 or 4 years old and you didn't go through any of the warranty stuff, if it had any, and you're curious,
Yeah.
like, okay, what am I going to be looking at for, electrical
What's
modules or
what's this cost going to be?
yeah,
Like
yep,
I mean, this L5P, this emission system, this is almost 8 grand for everything. Um, the CAT, the DPF, the NOx sensors, the EGT sensors, and your hydrocarbon dosing valve, which is your diesel exhaust valve. That does not include the CAT on the turbo. That does not include your DEF system, your DEF pump, your DEF nozzle. Um, that's just downpipe back. That's almost 8 grand that you will be on the hook for
yeah,
if you are not taking care of your system appropriately, if you are not driving your truck right. This is going to be your problem. And for this stuff that federally has to be on your truck in most states, well, it's supposed to be on your truck in all states, but for most states that are enforcing this, most states do, um, this is your problem. This is your monkey, your circus. It is your job to make sure that you are driving the truck appropriately, you are using the right additives, you're buying diesel in the right place. And we saw the same thing too. We always have people that ask us, well, how are we supposed to check our diesel? What are we supposed to do? Take testing samples with us to the station? Don't be dramatic. Ask the fuel attendant. And most people, I mean, for where I live at least I go to the same fuel station when I go to work. I go to the same fuel station when I go home. For the most part, most people use the same fuel stations and they are consistently using the same fuel delivery companies as well. Just check with them. It's a question. It's not that hard. And it's stuff that it's your problem. If you don't ask the questions, you're not going to ever know the answers. You're never going to understand why something happened. I mean, those turbos, that cat clogs up this turbo. It's $2,800. Takes over 10 hours to do. It's not cheap,
yeah.
and it is your problem.
I think
The
that's what's
modules.
yeah, the module. I was going to ask you that. I forgot at the beginning, but
Mhm.
and I'm sure it varies based on which module, how many of them. But what's kind of a price range you might see for electrical issues?
Um, well, like for example, the common ones, you know, Fleece makes these nice connectors. You're 40 to 60 bucks for a connector, and you're going to be paying about an hour to an hour and a half in labor, depending on how you want the repair done. Do you want butt connectors or do you want it soldered? I immediately solder unless you request a butt connector. A butt connector is just going to get yarded out again, especially with where we're at. We're in a very, agricultural area. Real, people go camping, they go hunting, they go fishing, it's if you put a butt connector on it, it's going to get yarded out eventually. So we do solder primarily unless you don't want it. Because I mean, obviously we're going to charge a little bit more just because it does take more time and it is using more shop material to solder something. So that, I mean, that's going to be a couple $100. A module that goes bad, I mean, that's going to be anywhere from $800 to $2,800. It depends on which one it is. Electrical stuff, the engine harness, that's $2,300. Chasing electrical, you know, and this is where it gets really expensive just because the tools that we have to use. If you were trying to identify a CAN bus issue, CAN bus high, CAN bus low, the tools that we had to purchase to be able to do the stuff appropriately, the training that you send your technicians to learn how to do this stuff. It's not cheap. So it does get expensive. On average, if a truck is in for electrical work, and let's just say we're looking, I mean, this is just to find a short, something going on, a wire that's rubbing on a bracket, the valve cover, a motor mount. I mean, on average, you're probably gonna be paying $600 to $800 to find that problem. Especially with these trucks that are all ran by electrical everything.
Yeah. Yeah, they're more complex. There's so many more systems on them. I like to be objective when like asking this question, and I think even if I personally answer it, but there's just so much of the questions that I've gotten over the years are people who are they don't own this truck yet, but they're looking in that 3 to 5 6 year range, and they say which one's the best one to buy. So I know we haven't covered the Ram yet, but I wanted to ask you between the 6.7 Ford and the L5P. I kind of have to ask you two different ways. One is which truck do you like more as a shop owner?
Afford.
The Ford. And then, like personally, if you were in that position where you wanted to buy a 3 to 5 year old truck, so it fits into our 6.7 Power Stroke conversation, it fits into this one, would you shy away from one of them because of some of these issues?
Yeah, yeah, I would. Especially, I mean, again, and it would come back to the repair cost of the L5P, unfortunately. Um, the Ford emission system is is almost half the cost to replace and the exhaust. Like the Ford exhaust, because the cat and the DPF is all one unit. It's yeah, it's a fraction of the cost
Yeah, I think
compared to the L5P.
I was thinking about this after our Power Stroke episode, and then this one, thinking about it, just if I was looking objectively just at these two so far, and maybe I'll do this after we talk about the 6.7 comments, kind of revise it. But I like what you mentioned about the Ford with the robustness of the transmission. Yeah, there's some issues, but I could be preemptive with it and maintenance it, and I think I would feel comfortable with that. But once I hear electrical, I just cringe because I've had a few issues in the past with trucks and electrical things. Oh, it's just it can be such a nightmare. It can be hard to find, and it makes me hesitate so much to jump into that and
That
take it on, like you said.
and then it's because everybody's like, okay, well then do I go with an older truck? Well, now you're still gonna have an electrical problem, but now you're dealing with less electrical problems because less monitors, less harnesses, less jumper harnesses, but now you're dealing with the fact that they're not made anymore.
Yeah.
And not even having to go that far back. Like on a Cummins, like we had a 2012 come in that had a critter that ate through the chassis harness. It's not made. I mean, it's just over 10 years old. It's not made. We can't get it. Um, so now you're stuck having to either repair it, send it out for repair, or, Go to a local salvage yard if you're lucky enough to have one in town and do, like a pick and pull or see what they got.
Yeah.
And hopefully you find one that's in better shape than what you're having to deal with. So it does suck to try to pick the lesser of the two evils, I guess. You either deal with a vehicle that has all the electrical because it's ran off of everything, but you can get the parts to replace it. But they're offensively expensive. Or you deal with a vehicle that doesn't have as many electrical problems and not as much electrical things to go wrong, but when they do go wrong, you're up the creek without a paddle because that part's not made anymore. Eh,
I was just going to ask you with some, it doesn't even have to be specific to the L5P. This could pertain to all three of them. Do you think maybe some of these issues just arise because of the time frame they were built? You think of that 2020, 2021
Oh
supply
yeah.
chain issues, quality control, just the way it's just that time frame kind of lends itself to some of the stuff.
Our administration, depending on what countries that you are dealing with, plays a massive role. Just because every administration that you get into, we're going to stop dealing with this country, we're going to start dealing with this country, we're going to put tariffs on these people. So because we've got more tariffs here, this distributor is going to stop making parts here. Because you'll start noticing, like for example, I started throwing crap the other day out in the shop. I was pulling through some of the bearings, doing inventory, and I looked down at one of our Cummins bearings and it says made in China. Like some of that stuff's being made in China now. And you don't know this. It's just that's what happens when you either have countries that are your country is no longer dealing with, or there was so high tariffs put on them that the manufacturer was forced to go a different route. So that plays a factor. Availability of material obviously plays a massive factor. Supply and demand for what's going on. Obviously, everybody should be familiar with, COVID trucks.
Yeah.
That is a real thing. Um, it is a massive thing. Quality control just kind of it went out the door with that. Quality control is non-existent in any of those vehicles. Any of the parts that are on those are not great, and primarily because they worked with what they had to deal with. They still had to get vehicles to market because people still needed them. So they just had to do with what they could. And then the other thing that plays a massive role is generationally, the people that you have working on the product line. You look at that generation of individuals that are working. Like Gen Alpha, you just look at those type of people that are working on those lines and are putting products together, um, and how things are working. That just the people that are getting stuff out, you do notice the employees and the workforce that they have to deal with. That those people don't care. I'm sorry. There is an entire generation of individuals that are working and making these parts that they work just hard enough to not get fired. I'm trying to figure out a really polite way to say this, and I'm struggling. Um, but that's the other problem.
Well, it's something you've seen. You've been in this industry for so long. Like I can say as a consumer, I noticed a difference, not even just with automotive, with lots of things from
Everything.
2020 on that changed. But like you see so many parts and so many, whether they're OEM or they're aftermarket for all these years that you've seen generationally how they've changed. And I think that's a really key component of what we're talking about with these newer trucks is, yeah, there are common issues that arise, but really the
Where are they
reason.
stemming from?
Yeah, where are they coming from? Can you avoid it? How can you address it? And we're really trying to help people to say,
Mhm.
if you already have one of these trucks, this is what you might face. Or if you're going to get into one, set aside some money for this because this kind of a diesel
This is
shop's
going to
saying
be a
this.
problem.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is going to be a problem. Just know it, forewarn. A lot of in a lot of diesel shops, they do purchase inspections, like we do. We do pre-purchase inspections. We highly encourage our all of our customers or anybody that we haven't dealt with. Like if you're looking at buying a truck, and either whether you know diesel or not, if you are looking at buying a vehicle, we do inspections. Make an appointment, bring the truck here. It's, we're unbiased, totally third party. And we'll do, a bumper to bumper. We will go through and pull the VIN attributes on it to see the build sheet, the spec sheet where it was built. We will do a VIN history report for you. We'll go through and look up where it was sold, how many owners it's had, if it's gone to auction, accidents, where it was registered, where it lived at, what states it spent most of its time in. And then from there, we'll give you, I'll give you your history report just based off of that. And then we'll physically go through the truck. And then I give that report to the techs and be like, hey, this truck lived in Michigan. This thing's got rust. Find it.
yeah,
You know, just this is stuff I want you to look for because this is where the truck was at. And you also see and know that type of individual as well that either live there or when you see a lot of it's private party. We'll have two people come in, the guy that's buying, the guy that's selling. And you can typically look at the individual that's selling the vehicle and you can kind of see how they dress, you know, how they dress, what they're wearing, how they talk, how they walk, and how the truck looks, and know what you should be looking for. And we will go through the truck and then give the purchaser or somebody looking to purchase, like, hey, don't buy this truck, or hey, this is a good buy, you're getting a deal, or hey, if you're going to buy it, offer them a little bit lower, and this is why you're going to have to deal with this.
yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll give you your normal repair, your average repair, if it, like if it's a Dodge, if it hasn't had a tranny, you're putting in a tranny. This is the average cost. If you're buying an LV7 Duramax, it hasn't had injectors in 10 years. Here's the cost of it do an injector job. LOY, here's the cost of doing head gaskets. A 6.0, here's the cost of doing head gaskets. Whether it's a 6.7 Ford and LML, here's the cost of doing a CP3 kit. Or yeah, that's a CP4 disaster contamination kit. We'll go through and give them all the common stuff if that stuff has not been done and or addressed.
It's good information. It's good advice as well, and I appreciate your time going through what you're seeing in the shop to get this information out there to people who are listening or curious, where they want to be educated and know what they might be looking at. So it was great to chat with you today. I did want to ask you, what's the best way for people to connect with you? I did see on YouTube there's a lot of customers that I guess follow us or saw the video that already go to you guys
Yep.
for service and things like that. But for somebody who's new, or maybe they're local to you, or they want to just take their truck someplace, how can they connect with Siskiyou Diesel?
So you guys give us a call, 541-630-5020. You can shoot us an email, siskiewdiesel@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can private, use your words, I'm so sorry. Private message on there. You will get our social media guy that runs that, and he gets usually got all the messages over to me. And then from there, I'll get a hold of you guys, whether give you a call back, shoot you an email, text message. Typically, and we'll answer through the weekend too. I mean, I'm here, obviously, it's Sunday, but I'm also here on Saturdays too. But yeah, no, we'll usually, yeah, any one of those options you can get through to us.
All right, we got that 6.7 Cummins one. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that and what you guys are seeing at the shop with some of the newer ones. So we have that one coming up. But it was great to chat with you today, Kat. And like I said, I appreciate the expertise and the knowledge and helping people understand L5Ps and what they might face for repairs or issues.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 25TDP40 to get 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear. If you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house, they've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, handle design, opening mechanisms. It's their whole lineup's really designed to meet any budget that you might have. So if you're in the market, make sure and head on over to their website and use code 25TDP40 for 40% off MSRP. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters. Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, Robert, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube, podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.